Roman, it's a pleasure to have you here on Real Vision. We've wanted to do this interview with you for a long time. We're very excited to talk about BNY Mellon's view of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and DLT technology. For folks who may not know, BNY Mellon plays an incredibly important role, and I think a unique role in the US and global financial system. We're going to talk about all of that in just a moment. But first, Roman, tell us a little bit about your background. You have an interesting background in mathematics and consulting. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Ash, I'm really excited to be here. It's a great opportunity for us to bring our story to your viewers. It's a great platform. So let me start with the story, how I got here. I was born in Russia. I came to the US 30 years ago, 1991. And I am indeed a math major, but applied math major. So actually applying mathematics in BNY Mellon is kind of one of the things I do. I was an early FinTech entrepreneur. That was before the name FinTech. We called it e-commerce at the time. And then I ended up in consulting. Completely by chance, maybe that's a story for another interview. And in consulting, I focused on two things. I always worked on digital, and I spent majority of my time on security servicing industry. So when I had an opportunity to join BNY Mellon, it's the first head of digital in our 237-year-old history. I already thought that's the best job in the world. Digital, something that I've been working on for my entire life and really enjoy. And security servicing, asset servicing, which is something I spend a lot of time on. And today I lead our asset servicing business, which is our largest, and I'll tell you about that. And I also lead digital across the enterprise. So it's often people ask me, kind of, which hat are you wearing? And I say, there is only one hat. It's two titles, but one hat. Fundamentally, digital is our business, and the business is becoming increasingly digital.
Yeah.
So the line what's digital and what's not has absolutely blurred. And I'm thrilled to be leading the business that is becoming digital in every interaction.
So let's rewind the clock a little bit. Give folks a sense of what BNY Mellon does. So as you mentioned, 237-year-old bank. Obviously, for people who have worked in the financial services sector, they know BNY Mellon as, I believe, the world's largest custody bank. This is an incredibly important role in the global financial system, but I think one whose importance isn't really well understood outside the industry itself. Tell us a little bit about that global custody business, what it is, and why it's so significant.
Yeah, so global custody business. We're responsible today for custody of 45 trillion of assets. Trillion. I just want to make sure that everyone is hearing this number.
This is like more than double US GDP. It's a massive, massive number.
It's a massive number, which is basically roughly 20% of all assets in the world. So 20% of all assets in the world, think about every stock on every stock exchange. Think about every bond on every exchange. 20% being custodied at BNY Mellon. So what does it mean, custody? Yeah. Fundamentally, custody is safekeeping. I mean, that's what we think about, the word. It really means that it's safekeeping the asset, making sure that what you have is sound, is secure, it's kept, it's protected. In early days, custody was very physical. You give me a piece of paper, it's a valuable piece of paper, and put it in a vault. Or you have a piece of gold. You don't want to kind of keep a piece of gold in your living room, or I assume most people don't. You give it to somebody to keep that. Or I need to transport something from point A to point B, from Europe to the US. And I give it to somebody, and you say, please take good care of that. Keep it in your custody. Of course, over time, custody became more complex. We're no longer talking about a physical piece of paper or physical piece of gold or something on a container ship. We're talking about things in custody in a digital form. When you go and you buy shares of a stock, you buy it through your broker, but you really want to make sure you have what you have. So that's custody. There is a record that you, Ash, have 100 units of that stock. And you can rely on somebody to know that you absolutely have that. Nothing will happen it doesn't matter what will happen with your broker. It doesn't matter what will happen with any other industry participant. You have it. That's what custody is about.
Yeah, this is such a critical idea that it doesn't really matter what happened from the person that you buy the stock from. Once it's custodied by a custodian, the custodian then assumes responsibility for that asset. And it's been a fascinating transition talking about the physical custody of certificates back in the days when BNY had vaults hundreds of years ago where these were stacked. And then we moved toward this bookkeeping, this book entry method of custodying statistics. And so now it brings us to this key inflection point that we're at with the digital age. Tell us a little bit about how you guys think about that at the bank.
So, first of all, custody is already increasingly digital. When you buy that 100 shares, you don't get a certificate even. You get an email, right? It shows up somewhere on your statement, and statement being electronic statement. So in many ways, it's a representation, it's a digital representation of your holdings. Now we're making a transition, the assets themselves are becoming more digital. Right? So when we talk about digital assets, the digital assets, needless to say, need a digital custody. The custody is becoming more digital and assets are becoming more digital. So if you kind of picture, this continuum, we went from physical custody of very physical assets to more of a digital custody of physical assets. And now we're talking about digital custody of digital assets. So what do we mean by digital assets? It's a whole spectrum of things. The cryptocurrencies are certainly digital assets. And we know within cryptocurrency, obviously, we all talk about Bitcoin, but there are many of them, as of course you know. We're talking about stable coins. And a stable coin is basically a representation, a digital representation of some underlying asset. There is an increasing talk of central bank issued digital currency. So in essence, we have a dollar and we have a digital dollar. We have a euro, we have a digital euro, and some countries already making pretty significant steps. And the last category, which is actually very meaningful, is what we call tokenized assets. The tokenized asset, it could be a security, it could be a real estate, it could be a piece of art. So as an example, there is a big building. And this building is in essence fractionalized, or in other words, tokenized. So you own 1/100th of a building, or you own 1,000th of a building. So that allows somebody to participate economically in the investment of that building without having a need to buy the building outright. Of course, many of these things are available in the current world, but using blockchain technology makes these things simpler, in many cases more accessible, and frankly has a promise of decreasing transaction costs.
So we're talking about effectively the potential here to digitize all of the world's assets, the things that are already trading in a book entry format, but also new classes of on-chain assets, the tokenization, the fractionalization of things like real estate, art, cash flows even flowing off other securities. It's truly a brave new world. This is a massive mandate, a massive potential change that we see coming. How are you guys thinking about that? It's a big ship already, $45 trillion of assets under custody. How are you thinking about this transition to something that could see that number rise substantially?
Right. I mean, in many ways, it's a very significant transition. But in other ways, it's really part of our DNA. 237 years old. Of course, we fundamentally stand for trust. I mean, people trust us all over the world. I mean, when I talk to fundamentally what is custody, custody is about trust. Custody is about safekeeping. But as we just discussed, the industry evolves. It evolves all the time. So the word innovation been really present in our DNA, in our culture from the beginning. Alexander Hamilton, who founded Bank of New York, it was absolutely innovative of his day. In fact, when he started the bank, there was no US currency. I'm not talking about digital currency. I'm not even about talking paper currency. There was no US central currency. And Bank of New York was the first issuer of what is called Fujio coin, which was a metal coin, and it was the first US instrument. So obviously we went a very long way. But the reason I'm starting is that because it's a trust and innovation and trust that were always part of our DNA. So today, as the assets evolve, as digital assets becoming much more of a part of the mainstream, we have an opportunity, but we also have an imperative to provide custody to all the assets. Much like we provided custody to paper certificates and to gold and to physical goods, now we provide custody to stock and bonds and ETFs and other instruments. We feel it's fundamentally important for the industry at large and for all the stakeholders for us to play a similar role in a digital assets custody. So it's evolution for sure, but it's just normal. Because as the asset becomes part of mainstream, we need to be there.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.